You had a good conversation with Jordan Peterson. He was talking about the more you have this kind of virtualization, the more you allow the psychopaths to reign free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like the more we have artificially generated porn, the more we have artificially generated violence, photorealistic violence.
Yeah.
The more you make it normal for you to be basically a psychopath in the digital space, and enable that and make that okay, and then you forget what it's like to actually be a good human being.
And then also part of the problem may be that we may very well be looking at a world, whether it's 10 years from now, 20 years from now, whatever it is, where these children that have grown up in this environment now have a completely different way of looking at people and the world because of all these interactions they have. It's flavored their personality. And then we move into a digital world of we're not there yet in terms of virtual reality. It's not good enough. I mean, I think that's what we're seeing with the meta failure. Mm-hmm. People were expecting, a lot of people were just going to dive in and start wearing goggles all over the house. But it's not quite there yet. Yeah. There's also something weird for people. There's something really weird about wearing these head goggles and walking. It's really fun. I really enjoy the boxing games. You ever done any of them?
No, in VR, no.
They're great. You get a workout. You legitimately get a workout because you're actually sparring against like a computer character. It's throwing punches at you. You're moving your head. And so you have these things on your hands and, you get tired. It's good.
It feels realistic.
A little bit. When you get hit with a punch, your face lights up. You get a flash of light, which is kind of cool because you're like, oh, Jesus. You feel it like you're getting hit. There's some really fun games. There's one where you walk a plank across these two buildings and you hear the wind whistle and shit.
Oh, that one is terrifying.
There's zombie ones. There's a lot of cool ones, but people are just not buying into it the way they buy into Xbox and PlayStation. They're not like wholesale committed to this yet, but they will be. It's gonna be so fucking good that instead of like having it in a goggle form where it's like this big clunky thing on you, it's gonna be very easy to do. Well, when they get to that, oof.
I've been revisiting some classic books recently, just doing a reading list, and one of them that captures this extremely well that I recommend, that I think most people read in like middle school or something, but it's actually very relevant, is Brave New World. So a lot of people, including Jordan Peterson, worry about 1984, sort of a dystopia that represents a totalitarian state. But Brave New World there's no centralized government that's like dogmatically controlling everything, surveilling everything. They basically created this world where sex is easy, everyone's promiscuous. Genetic engineering removes any kind of diversity, any kind of interesting, dark, bad diversity that we would think of, like the Hunter S. Thompsons and the Bukowskis, the weirdos of society. And then he gives you drugs, soma, it basically gives you pleasure whenever you want if you start feeling a little too shitty about your life. And that's actually
closer to us.
And it doesn't seem, the way he writes about it, it sounds bad. Like, we don't want that. But then you're like, you start to ask a question like, well, at which point would we realize it's bad? Because it's constantly, obviously we should do genetic engineering to remove any kind of like maladies that we have, any kind of diseases. It's like everything is an obvious step forward, but then the place you end up at, just like with sex, like, is it good to have artificial images of as many as you want? As much porn as you want, as much sex as you want, is that good? As much awesome stuff as you want, is that good? Is that what human flourishing looks like? Or do you want to have some constraints, some limitations, some finiteness of resources, some scarcity? Maybe that's actually fundamental for human happiness. Having too much of awesome stuff, maybe that destroys the possibility of real, meaningful, deep happiness.
It certainly does. But I think the question really becomes, are we going to stay people? Because I don't think we are. I think we're moving in that general direction anyway. I think that probably is why we have this, it's almost inevitable if you have this addiction to cell phone issue, because everybody has that. If you have a cell phone and you're on your social media apps during the day and you're on YouTube, you're probably addicted, whether you realize it or not. And the number of hours that you put on those things is shocking. When you actually look at your screen time, you're like, 6 hours? I was on my phone for 6 hours? What the fuck did I do? And you'll try to rationalize it and justify it, but what that's doing to young people is got to be very strange. And if that, along with all the contaminants that are affecting the way people develop, which are, Dr. Shanna Swan from the book Countdown talks about this. She talks about phthalates in plastics and how you can trace back to like the 1950s when they really started using a lot of plastics and petrochemical products that started getting into people's bodies in the form of phthalates. It started diminishing sperm count and smaller penises and testicles and taints and more miscarriages for women, lower fertility rates. All that is, she believes, is directly correlated with the data that they've done already on mammals. When they do that to mammals, in tests, the more phthalates they enter into their system, the more they have issues like this. So we're becoming less able to procreate naturally. And if we get to a point where the human race's future, it's the only way we're going to be able to procreate is some sort of genetic engineering and some sort of artificial womb or some sort of a system that they develop that allows you to combine you and your partner's DNA and create a new child. That seems to me like if you were going to do that and you started engineering out very specific aspects of people that are problematic, anger, greed, jealousy, lust, all these different things, you would turn people into some sort of sexless thing that gets its pleasure by manipulating its neurochemistry through some electronics, through something. Maybe it's something you take so they can control it, but that's not far off of the path of possibility. If you really looked at where we're going now, and if the fertility rates drop, if they really do, and I know people a lot smarter than me are actually worried about, like Elon's worried about the amount of children that people have. There was a thing today on Italy. I was reading this article on Italy where they were talking about how the population is very old and they're not having a lot of kids. And like, this is unsustainable. Like, you can only do this for so long before you don't have anybody living there anymore. And we don't think of that as being a possibility, but it doesn't take that long if nobody has kids for there to be no more people left. Like, how many, 100 years? Like, if nobody has kids, 100 years from now, there's no people. It's real simple. You have to make people, and how many do you have to make? And can you make them? Because you might want to start making them when you're 37, and you might go to a doctor, and the doctor's like, well, this is touch and go. You're going to have to do in vitro fertilization, and then you go through all this shit, and you're taking shots, and you're timing everything, and
on top of that,
genderless.
I do think if we're not careful, I think there's exciting positive possibilities, but there's also negative possibilities of these AI systems like ChatGPT, but later versions, forming deep, meaningful connections with human beings where most of your intimacy in terms of friendships and like a deep connection with an intelligent entity comes from AI systems.
Could you imagine if you're driving to work and you and the AI are just having a conversation, shooting the shit, and the AI is really funny, and the AI is your buddy? Like, Lex, what's going on, bro? What are we doing? Lex, what are we doing with this bullshit job? Fuck this place. Let's go home. Yeah. Let's have ice cream. And you're laughing. I got work to do. I know. I'm fucking around. Yeah. Imagine.
Yeah. What are you doing with that girlfriend?
Yeah. Come on, Lex.
She keeps being mean to you, nagging you all the time. You don't need her.
Coming off like a bitch, Lex. You don't want to do that. She's not going to respect you. You're going to have to break up with her just so she respects you.
Why don't you murder her, Lex?
Yeah, Lex. There's a way to get away with it. I'm just saying. Joking around, buddy. Joking around. Next thing you know, it's talking you into the swamp with a fucking body bag.